Mrs. Johnston, and welcome to Knowledge and Social Studies time. We are on Unit 9, Columbus and the Pilgrims, Lesson 3. What have we already learned? Looking at the image card, why did people from Europe want to travel to the Indies in Asia hundreds of years ago? What kinds of things were people like the families of Genovia and Sophia looking for? People were seeking gold, beautiful cloth, and spices. As we look at this image, it reminds us that the Europeans could not get to Asia by traveling east on land. Why was that? The land route was closed in the town or city of Constantinople. The um, people from there were not allowing Europeans to travel through or pass through. As we look at the map, the because Europeans could not travel through Constantinople, new explorers wanted to try leaving Italy, coming around the coast of Africa, and then up to reach Asia. In our second story, there was a man named Columbus, and he had a different idea than most navigators about getting to Asia. Instead of sailing east around Africa, he thought, what thought did he have would be the best route for traveling to the Indies? Columbus thought the best route would be sailing west from Europe to get to Asia. So when we look back at our map, Columbus thought the best idea was to leave Italy, travel west, and come around, and he would come out on the other side and bump into Asia. Remember that there are continents to the west that are covered up by water. They have not yet been discovered by people from Europe in Columbus's time. Columbus thought there was only ocean to the west. During Columbus's time, who were the richest people who had enough money to pay for the ships and sailors to sail the ships? The kings and queens or rulers of Europe were the richest people who had enough money to pay for the ships and sailors to sail the ships. As I read today's lesson called 1492, even though Columbus now had the support of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, his idea was very difficult for anybody to believe. Listen carefully to find out how the journey into the unknown turned out. The year was 1492. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, as the rulers of Spain, provided Christopher Columbus with three ships. Rulers are leaders in charge of a country or land, like kings and queens. Who were the rulers of Spain? King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. They gave him money to pay for crews. A crew is a group of people working on a ship to sail them, plus food and water for the long voyage. Columbus was to sail his fleet westward to the Indies. There he would trade European goods for rare spices, gold, and other treasures that the king and queen desired. Columbus and his crew, the sailors who sailed the three ships, would take some supplies made in Europe to trade for spices and gold that they were seeking. Columbus's three ships had names: the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Can you say those names with me? The Nina, the Pinta, Santa Maria. Can you find the smallest ship in the picture? The smallest ship in the picture. That is the Nina. The middle-sized one, the Pinta, was the fastest of the three. Columbus chose to sail on the largest ship, the 120-foot long Santa Maria, or Saint Mary. Proud of all three vessels and wanting his voyage to succeed, he was determined to choose the best sailors that he could find in all of Spain. This palace is what Columbus imagined he and his crews would see when they arrived to the Indies. Columbus was confident that he could attract the men he needed and convince them to go on the voyage. True, he had to paint word pictures of warm, beautiful lands where gold and rare spices were so common that a person could hardly avoid tripping over them. He suggested, without actually promising, that his crew would return to Spain, so rich that they could all live in grand homes and wear fine clothes. Another thing he told them was quite true. Queen Isabella had offered a huge cash reward, a lot of money, to the first person who sighted the Indies. Perhaps it was this offer that was the most convincing of all to the sailors. One by one, Columbus found his men, and they agreed to join his expedition. An expedition is a journey by a group of people for a special reason. So notice in the picture that the crews are taking little boats to get off and on the bigger ships. At last, everyone and everything was ready. On August 3rd, 1492, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria sailed out of their Spanish harbor, bound for a possible fortune in the Indies. The sailors were proud and excited. But when they passed the last familiar lands, the Canary Islands, and found themselves in open sea, out of sight of any land, their excitement began to turn to uncertainty. and then to fear. Columbus tried to calm their fears. Both Columbus and the crew were feeling less safe than the longer they sailed in the open sea. As days passed, and then weeks, Columbus's reassurance was no longer enough to keep the crew from becoming seriously frightened. What do you think they're afraid of? Remember, Columbus made his trip long, long ago. Sailors had no way to communicate or talk with anyone other than with sailors on the ships. They were afraid of running out of food, of dying or death, being lost at sea, the ship sinking. Those were all great examples. Days and days and long nights passed. The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria had been sailing westward out at sea for weeks now. They had entered a part of the ocean in which long, thick seaweed covered the surface in every direction, for as far as the eye could see. This is a good sign, Columbus thought. Why do you think that seaweed is a good sign? The water's getting shallow could mean land coming up. It may mean we are nearing land. But then the winds died down to nearly nothing, and the sails hung lifelessly from the masts. The three ships crept forward and sometimes stopped moving altogether. Each day was like the one before, and Columbus and the sailors wondered, will we ever get out of the seaweed? Will the wind ever change and come back to us? Why do the sailors want the wind to come back? Remember, long ago there were no motors or engines on the ships to make them move. That's right. They wanted the wind to come back so that the sails would catch the wind and move the ships again. At last, after days and days, the wind picked up again, and they sailed free of the clinging seaweed and back into the open sea. Still, the sailors worried, and they no longer bothered to hide their doubts from Columbus. When will we find the land you promised us? They asked. Soon, he told them, trying to look confident. Soon we will get there. But he said this, Columbus too had his own doubts. But the sailors were tired of sailing and were losing hope. They came to Columbus one day and begged him to turn the ships around. Give me 3 more days, he said. If we have not seen land by then, we will turn around. But the days passed with no sign or progress. Then on the 3rd day, a sailor called out, There's something floating in the water ahead. Fish it up out of the water, Columbus ordered. Some sailors tossed a net over the side and drew up the object. It is a stick, cried one of the sailors. It looks as if someone has carved its sides with a knife. That must mean there's land ahead, and someone is living there, the others said excitedly. Why is a carved stick a sign of land? You are smart. That is right. Sticks grow on land. They are not in the ocean. so seeing a stick must mean that they are close to land. The next day, several sailors saw branches with green leaves floating on the surface of the water. Then the crews of all three ships saw a large flock of birds flying overhead. "We must be getting close to land," the men cried with excitement. The birds circled above, as if examining the three ships, then turned back in the direction from which they had come. "Follow them," Columbus ordered. "The birds will lead us to land." Soon the salty sea breeze began to carry a new scent their way. "Could we be smelling the spices of Asia up ahead?" the sailors asked one another, growing more and more excited. But still they saw no land. On the evening of Thursday, October 11th, Columbus ordered the ships to drop anchor, something they had not done on the entire voyage. "If we really are close to land," he thought, "we might be carried by the current up against the shore in the darkness, and never know until it's too late." That night, walking the deck of the Santa Maria, he saw a light in the distance. "It is too far away to be coming from the Pinta," he thought, knowing that the ship was anchored farther ahead of his own, "and the light is too low in the sky to be a star. It must be a fire set by some human being on a shore up ahead." The shore is the land at the edge of a body of water. How do you think Columbus will feel when he sees the shore? Excited? Yes. A few hours later, in the early morning hours of October 12th, 1492, Columbus heard the sound of a cannon. "It is coming from the Pinta," he thought. "They must have sighted land." Why do you think the Pinta fired its cannon? To signal land? Which of the three ships saw land first? The Pinta. Waiting impatiently as the early light of dawn increased, he stared ahead until he saw what the sailors on board the Pinta had seen: a long, low shore on which the ocean waves were smoothly breaking. The men of the Pinta were cheering, and a moment later, cheering broke out aboard the Nina and the Santa Maria, too. What finally happened on October 12th, 1492? The sailors found land. They see the shore. They are excited. They are happy. Dressing formally or nicely for the occasion, and carrying a long flagpole bearing the flag of Spain, Columbus and some of his men rowed over the waves in a small boat to the shore of the new land. Stepping out into the water, Columbus and the sailors stepped ashore. By his calculations, Columbus believed he had landed on the continent of Asia, in the Indies. Then he plunged the flagpole into the sandy shore and said, "On behalf of their majesties, I, Christopher Columbus, claim this land and all that it is in for Spain." In what year did Christopher Columbus sail on his first voyage? 1492. The rulers of Spain, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, provided Columbus with three ships. What were their names? The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. On which ship did Columbus travel? The Santa Maria. What five signs did Columbus and his crew see that made them think they were getting close to land? They saw seaweed, a carved stick, branches with leaves, land birds, and light in the distance. On which continent and in which place did Columbus think he had landed? Columbus thought he had landed in the Indies on the continent of Asia. When Columbus landed and thought he was in the Indies, he put the Spanish flag in the sand and said the land would now belong to Spain. Why did he do that? Columbus did that to show that he had claimed the land that he arrived on for Spain. To Columbus and his crew, this meant that anything they found on the land was theirs and could be taken and brought back to Spain. What did Columbus hope to find in the Indies to bring back to Spain? Spices, treasures, cloth. Why do you think the author titled this read aloud 1492? The author titled the read aloud 1492 because that is the year that Columbus began his sail westward. Was 1492 a long time ago or not so long ago? It was a long time ago, as it was more than 500 years ago. I hope you enjoyed our story today, 1492.